Meet Eva, my daughter, at the Dutch coast only a few years ago. To me, this picture represents the ultimate carefree holiday feeling. And every time I look at it, it really makes me smile. Travel affects people, right? It stimulates our senses as it did and does with her. Feeling the wind through her hair, having jitters in her stomach, salt on her lips. Citizens all over the world are looking for memorable experiences. They want to escape, connect, relax. And an enormous power emanates from this. And with that comes an enormous responsibility. We must urgently steer these forces in the right direction for us and future generations. And I strongly believe that DMOs can play an instrumental role in this, but it won't be business as usual. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jos Vranken, Managing Director of the Netherlands Board of Tourism and Conventions, and thank you for having me. I wish I could have been there, but you'll have to do with this recorded version due to COVID, unfortunately. MBTC is the Dutch National Tourist Organization. We're a public-private foundation operating between government and sector. We're privately funded, and to date, the public part is mainly coming from our Ministry of Economic Affairs. And the other part comes from partners who co-fund our various initiatives originating from our core working domains. More and more DMOs have started challenging their traditional roles and reinventing themselves and the tourism in their destinations. And so are we. A forward-looking approach has been designed to ensure tourism development that is economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable. However, there is no single truth or blueprint for the future. We can only share our experiences, influenced by our context and frame of reference, learn from each other, and enabling each of us to find our own pathways to a sustainable future. On the back of pre-pandemic over-tourism, followed by virtually no tourism, we now see a strongly increasing call for conscious tourism, focused on more exploration and less exploitation. We're on the eve of the redesign rather than the recovery of Destination Netherlands, since we do not necessarily want to go back to where we came from. Some destinations, like Amsterdam, may want less and/or different visitors, whereas many other places want to attract more visitors, fitting their destination fabric, if you like. All of them seem to have become more conscious about the volume and kind of visitors they'd like to welcome in the future. In order to spearhead and facilitate this process, we, as well as some regional DMOs and local CMOs, are in transition of moving from destination promotion to destination management. And for us, that journey started some 4 years ago. It started with Perspective 2030, a co-created vision and ambition for Destination Netherlands, initiated and facilitated by MBTC in 2018. Perspective 2030 presents a true paradigm shift, among which tourism not being a goal in itself, but a powerful means to various ends, a focus on shared and well-balanced interests of residents, businesses, and visitors, rather than a one-sided focus on sectoral interests, and the net impact, economic, ecological, and social, should be the leading principle rather than economic impact alone. They act for us as rules of engagement to be applied to the strategic priorities also outlined in Perspective 2030. As the initiating party, we roughly focused on two things directly following its publication. We focused on the stimulation of adoption. It almost felt like being evangelists at times, but we felt it was important to develop a new common direction and language, that we start singing from the same hymn sheet throughout the country, and therefore providing a solid base for cooperation. But we also were making our own choices on how we'd like to relate and contribute to Perspective 2030, and adapted our organization accordingly. The key changes were one, regarding purpose, our why, from attracting more visitors towards the sustainable development of Destination Netherlands. And on scope, our how, from promotion towards an integral approach based on 4 strongly related and interdependent core working domains: intel and insights, strategy and branding, destination development, and marketing. And they represent the building blocks of a destination management framework, reflecting our philosophy on destination management. And then Corona hit the world. As it turns out, not necessarily the natural reset for travel and tourism, as some suggested. Moreover, some of the pre-pandemic dynamics have become even more apparent and or accelerated as a result of the past 2 years. We really feel that we're at crossroads. Public and private interests seem increasingly at odds with each other, at least in the Netherlands. You see short-term market forces and reflexes by both businesses and consumers versus mid- and long-term governmental focus on more conscious and sustainable development. And on the one hand, you see the need for liquidity and continuity among businesses for all the relevant and right reasons. And on the other, you see the lower tolerance levels regarding what is being considered to be busy. In short, post-COVID, Perspective 2030 strategic principles are as relevant as ever before, and so is our journey. DMOs may have to get into collective marriage counseling to revalue the mutual relationships and interdependencies between various stakeholders. It explains why we spend quite a bit of time and energy in the adoption process of Perspective 2030 principles throughout the country, contributing to a less polarized debate and a less compartmentalized approach. Someone once said, if you want change, it can be done in 24 hours if it comes from the heart of power. But what or who is the heart of power? Is it the one with the loudest voice, with the biggest network? Is it knowledge or science, or those in senior management or politics? Tourism has no natural heart of power. Moreover, I'd argue that tourism is no sector. It transcends sectoral, geographical, and administrative borders. It requires a systemic approach and transition. As the National Tourist Organization, we therefore increasingly focus on applying soft power, optimizing both vertical cooperation within the visitor economy domain, as well as establishing horizontal cooperation between the visitor economy and other social economic domains, capitalizing on the strong interdependencies and mutual potential value. DMOs are positioned well to connect destination partners and others, look for the common interest, and focus on a net positive impact. We can lead the transition or exploration towards the desired future. It takes 2 to tango, but it takes 5 to thrive. Residents, businesses, visitors, policymakers, and yes, DMOs. We can act as the 5th power, the independent integrator, the matchmaker, the network and actionable coalition builders. So how do we try to execute this? With Perspective 2030, we underline the importance of the sustainable development of Destination Netherlands, applying an integral approach. We translated this into a so-called programmatic approach, outlining 5 strategic priorities, 12 key programs, each consisting of various collaborative projects. A national task force consisting of all stakeholders oversees the development and implementation. And task force members recently adopted the aforementioned destination management framework for their local and regional approach, contributing to further alignment among destination partners. But what does it mean in practice? We find ourselves more and more in the role of organizing collective intelligence, critical mass, and traction around programs, For example, the sustainability program, facilitating actionable coalition building, stimulates serendipity, organizing unexpected encounters between stakeholders. So instead of just promoting sustainable offers and propositions, as we used to, we now co-create a roadmap for climate neutral tourism in the Netherlands by bringing together stakeholders from within and outside our industry. Similarly, as part of the visitor management and resident engagement programs, we executed an academic study with regard to the carrying capacity of 3 pre-COVID hotspots in the Netherlands, published a digital framework and toolkit on resident engagement, as well as visitor management, and subsequently organized knowledge exchange sessions and a study trip for municipal and regional policymakers. Of course, a successful transition based on these paradigm shifts desperately needs new KPIs. If you can't measure, it doesn't exist, right? So without KPIs, no steering. And without steering, no desired direction. This relates to another example. We've initiated an open national data alliance, working together with relevant stakeholders on delivering better and more relevant insights, executed through a joint research and data agenda. The alliance includes a data and development lab, focusing on new methodologies and comparable standards, for example, through a project called State of the Destination, working on future steering variables and new KPIs regarding net impact. Clearly, it's an ongoing transition. We really are in the process of reinventing ourselves. So what did we learn so far? Well, key for our further transition is a government enabling us and other DMOs by giving strategic direction and at the same time providing room to maneuver. So putting the partnership at arm's length, if you like. A financial construct that fits that challenge. Our publicly-privately co-funding model is increasingly under pressure since the mid and long-term challenges and changing role doesn't necessarily fit the dependency on short-term ROI-driven co-funding by sectoral partners, or for that matter, income directly related to visitor numbers. But also, we learned the importance of showing moral leadership, be willing to swim against the stream, a unifying role of a common vision, ambition, and purpose. My suggestion would be, based on our learnings, initiate one, even if you don't have the mandate yet. DMOs tend to be the only stakeholder that has the required bird's eye view, subsequent network, and overall destination interest at heart. So be or become the integrator, the matchmaker, and exploration leaders. Focus on shared interest, particularly the growing importance of the social license to operate. And of course, net impact, with the importance of developing new KPIs to measure accordingly. And we find out that the great value in establishing horizontal cooperation with other socio-economic domains, optimizing mutual value and increasing relevance of tourism as a mean to various ends. Importance of creating tangible evidence and proof of value for the new route, because let's face it, our old ways have been much clearer and more recognizable than most of the elements of our new scope at this given time. And of course, be realistic, because total destination management is, of course, an illusion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me finish off by saying that this is Kinderdijk, a famous and maybe very stereotypical image of the Netherlands. But it's not just a pretty picture. It actually represents Dutch water management skills, nowadays also internationally exported and applied. These mills and many others throughout the country still prevent large parts of our country from flooding. If we're not careful, tourism will act like water. It flows to the lowest point where it accumulates and at some point cause flooding. By working together, unified, based on a very strong common vision and interest, we can redirect flows to where it's needed and desired most, whilst preventing flooding elsewhere. A Dutch metaphor for hopefully a fertile future. I wish all of us success in doing so. Thank you.